Chapter 11. Who are you? Miss, we've arrived, Delamain said. I had been sitting in the car in silence for 10 minutes now, contemplating the conversation I was about to have. I'd made sure to arrive early because I knew I would probably need some time to compose myself. Instead, I had disassociated and completely blanked out as the dread of what I might learn crept into my mind. My hands were knit together so tightly that they had gone pale from a lack of circulation. Delamain's prodding was the only thing that pulled me out of that mind state. Are you all right, Ms. Oradoom? Delamain asked. Your stress levels have elevated and you're showing signs of intense anxiety. Would you like me to bring you to a hospital? I shook my head. I'm fine. Just nervous about this meeting. He wasn't wrong. My vitals were spiking so much that I was receiving a message from Trauma Team. I groaned and tapped a button on my datapad to receive the call. Platinum Client 1337. This is Trauma Team Dispatch, a no-nonsense female voice over the call said. Your biomonitors just tripped an acute stress event. I'm seeing your resting heart rate spiking, blood pressure climbing, and unstable. HRV dropped out, plus respiration rate elevated with a CO2 washout trend consistent with hyperventilation. Sweat response is up, and your motion data says you're not exerting, so this isn't exercise. I was about to respond when she continued after taking a quick breath. I need a straight answer. Do you want a squad rolling? Yes or no? If yes, say confirm and give me your exact location, including the address, floor, axe route, and any lock codes. Tell me who's with you and whether there's any threat on site. If no, we're staying on the line while I rule out a medical crash. I'm fine, I replied, my voice shaky. I'm just about to go into a meeting that I'm nervous about. No need to send a team. All right, came the curt response. Trauma Team were known for their directness and focus on the job. Their customer service was keeping their clients alive by any means necessary. Smiles and bedside manner were not services they specialized in, let alone offered. I have to rule out a possible crash. Please answer the following questions. Are you having any chest pains or pressure? No, I replied. Are you having trouble breathing, faintness, or numb hands, or lips? No. Have you had any stims, meds, or any kind of medical or recreational drug in the last hour? No, I have not. Copy that, she replied. You're declining pickup, and you're cleared on crash indicators at this time. Here's what we're doing. I'm keeping your account in active watch for the next 30 minutes. If your vitals spike again, or your rhythm flags, you'll get one call back. After that, we dispatch without waiting. Right now, stay seated, keep your breathing slow. In for 4 seconds, out for 6 seconds. No stimulants, water only. Don't drive, don't shower, don't take anything new. If any of these hit, chest pressure, shortness of breath, fainting, sudden severe headache, confusion, or one-sided weakness, you say, confirm, and we roll, or you hit your emergency trigger. No debate. Trauma Team out. The line was cut, and I gave a mental sigh. I had fought monsters, undead, dragons, and literal gods, and the one thing that made me this nervous was a conversation with someone I thought I was. It took a few more minutes to stay seated and calm myself before stepping out of the car. Delamain would wait nearby for me since I had rented the car for the day. The car pulled away and left me at the entrance to the Santo Domingo City Facilities building. It was after hours, but a security guard let me in, understanding that I had a meeting. The building was sterile and Spartan. It had that air about it that most old public facilities have. Clean, because it has to be but built so long ago, that cleaning couldn't hide the decades-old designs. Plaques promoting the city's own good works dotted the walls, and only the most utilitarian of signs helped one find their way. I took an elevator up, and found the correct door. It was open, and I saw him before he saw me. He sat in a worn padded chair, wearing a black suit and baby blue tie. He looked just like I had, brown hair so dark you could confuse it, for black was combed back. His beard was short, trimmed, and well-maintained with just a hint of red in it. Where my eyes were bright sky blue, his were a stormy blue-gray. He looked angry, but I knew that look. It had been mine for over a century. He wasn't angry. He was concentrating. The whole situation suddenly felt like an out-of-body experience for me, watching him quietly, knowing every movement before he made it, how he would make it, and why he made it. "Are you going to stare or come in?" he asked, the voice so familiar that I unconsciously lifted a hand to touch my throat, as if to wonder if I had been the one to speak. I gathered my wits and stepped inside, moving to sit in the chair across from him. "Sorry, I wasn't exactly prepared for the way you look." "I'll take that as a compliment," he chuckled, a sly smirk playing at the edge of his lips. "I guess I should introduce myself properly." "You're 7, I said, directly. "Or not," he sighed. And here I was going to make it a big reveal. "Today is the 7th of July in 2077, I replied with a deadpan tone. "You're in room 7, on the 7th floor, and you schedule the meeting for 7 p.m. You weren't exactly subtle with the hint. I was going to say all of that, with a lot more showmanship. He crossed his arms and leaned back. "The only thing I can't wrap my head around is why you chose that name and that face," I said, ignoring his attempt at levity. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his confusion clear. "I've always had this face and I've always had this name. The only times I didn't were in Thedas and Westeros." My eyes narrowed. "You didn't look like that in the Wasteland." "And what do you mean you've always had that name?" "The Wasteland was an exception," he answered. "I looked like this originally, but to do my job, I had to go through multiple identity changes, which included new names and new faces." "And why do you care what my name is?" "Because that's my name," I shouted. "That's my name and my face." He stared at me silently for what felt like ages, and I admit that I began to wither beneath his slowly knitting brows. I'd had that effect on people when I went quiet in my first life. I didn't have a happy face, and my resting face seemed more akin to a scowl. I remember how my wife would walk into a room and ask me what was wrong when I was reading or watching something. He took in a slow, deliberate breath. "This wasn't the point of why I invited you here. But let me explain something to you. You have all but stolen the remaining fragments of my life. Ever since the Wasteland, I began to understand what was happening. T'Pria, whose original name is Jania, looked exactly the way she did in our first life. So did Serena, whose original name is Erica. One of them was my friend since middle school," he continued, his tone not allowing me to interrupt. "The other was my sister, and they allied with you. Then, Westeros. Alan, original name Mike, showed up as Alan. My best friend until he died prematurely. He allied with you as well. I watched those dearest to me treat you like their dearest friend, their closest confidant. You turned them against me without ever bothering to wonder who I might be." He leaned forward, only an inch or so, but I could feel myself leaning back instinctively. "All of my friends, my sister, all hate me now. And while I understand and own my actions, and why they would lead them to hate me. But now I know they're so happy to be with you because you've told them that you're me." "I'm not you," I said, my voice coming out in a whispered tremor. "I'm me. I'm who you say you are. I have all the memories and—" "No!" he barked, causing me to jump. "You aren't. Even if you had been, you're not anymore." "And what gives you the right to decide that?" I shouted, finding my nerve when he said that. Because you abandoned that person the moment you continued to be Merida, he growled, sending a shiver down my spine. Even if you were me, you stopped being me when you kept being you in the wasteland, in Westeros, and now here in Night City. If you were ever me, you've forsaken that person for the person you are now. And if that's the case, you probably never were. Whatever's happening to us, causing us to jump from world to world, could easily have just copied me and gave you my memories. But you aren't me. You haven't been for lifetimes, if ever. My lips tightened, eyes watered, and cheeks flushed with the reality of what he was saying. He wasn't wrong. Even if I was who I thought I had been, I hadn't returned to my normal self during any of my reincarnations. I'd never slipped back into my old way of life. I'd been Merida since I first opened my eyes in Thedas and never looked back. There hadn't even been time after being reincarnated for the first time where I panicked at the loss of my sex, family, or friends. I had just carried on, accepting the reality of my situation for what it was, and believing that there wasn't anything I could do to change it. And if I couldn't change it, I shouldn't waste time thinking about it. He had been himself this whole time. He had watched me live a life anyone might envy, keeping my friends and family close with me. But in his eyes, I had stolen those dearest to him. Had it been his anger and frustration at the injustice and absurdity of it all that had driven him to continue to loathe me once he'd learned the truth about the others? What could he possibly think of me now? Worse still was that he was right about me. While I accepted the memories of my first life and acknowledge that as the first link in the chain which bound me to the other fated, I had never once been myself again. I don't particularly care who you think you were, he said, breaking me from the thoughts churning through my mind. I know who I am. I can look in the mirror and see the reality of it. It's not a debate. Seeing is believing. I have the memories, and I've had the face again in the wasteland and now here in Night City. I am David Sylvia. You are Merida Oradum. I paused as something he'd said caught my attention. You didn't have this face in the wasteland. I know you had two faces, and neither was this one. What? He grinned wolfishly. You don't think I'd changed my appearance before then? I was an agent for the Conclave. I had been since my late teens. I changed my appearance multiple times, but I was born with this face. And I haven't been, I whispered dejectedly. And you haven't been? He echoed the sentiment. I don't care if you do go on thinking that you're me. You do whatever you want. But I'm tired of having to butt heads with you lifetime after lifetime. As far as I'm concerned, you and the others can keep away from me. I'm here to live my lives for as long as this keeps happening. And for this life, I'm going to trust you not to fuck it all up for me like you promised. So, can we get to the point of this meeting? Or do you need to continue arguing the point? My eyes burned with the tears I wanted to shed. He was speaking and acting just the way I would have. He'd spent 3 lifetimes watching those he care for adopt, who he believes to be a total stranger and hate him. He accepted the hurt, accepted the situation for what it was, swallowed it, and shouldered on. He was willing to rebuild from scratch, content to let the people he cared for be happy without him. He'd processed it all in the last couple of minutes and shouldered the burden of moving on alone with begrudging determination. Was I still the person he was? I knew he couldn't be happy about his decision. If we were the same person somehow, then I knew he wasn't built to be alone, but he'd be alone if it meant that's what had to be done for others to be happy. Could I still do that? Could I just let it all go if I had to? I straightened myself in the chair. I was certain my face was expressing every ounce of resentment and anger I had for him at that moment. But I simply gave a quick, curt nod. Good, he said, and plucked a data pad from his desk and handed it to me. Ever since you snatched up that property from Arasaka, Local authorities have been figuring out new ways to drag out the project so that they can continue to bilk you for as much money as possible. I've been collecting communication since the beginning. I took the pad and began scrolling through the contents. There were thousands of audio files, personal messages, pictures, and more. Each of them were a mix of actual business and conversations on how to delay the process or twist the law to get more from me. I shouldn't have been surprised, really, but I hated to see it all laid out in front of me. How could people be so selfish? Why did they need to delay something that would be so good for the people they were supposed to serve simply to gain a little bit of extra money? See, David said as he watched my expression, I know exactly what you're thinking. How could you cheer? I asked, as I looked up from the pad. We just had this conversation, he replied. You're me. Or at least you think you are. You look at those messages and wonder how these bottom feeders could be so selfish and self-centered as to delay a project that would do a lot for the community. I thought the same thing, so I started collecting the evidence. To what end? I asked as I offered the pad back to him. He held a hand up. Keep it. I put it on that for you since you supposedly can't have implants. His tone made it clear that he knew that was a lie. I hummed as I took the pad and set it in my lap. So, what do you plan on doing with this information? Me? Nothing. He shook his head at me. At least not until you bring it to my attention. I nodded in understanding. Suspecting that corruption delaying the process, I began hiring people to dig into the receipts and internal messages of the local government. I find all of this and notice one name not involved in any of the delays, additional fines, or fees, and not engaging in any of the discussions concerning them, and bring it to his attention. He agrees to assist you in pushing through the paperwork for the project and is a reliable witness for the lawsuits that come afterward. He continued for me. Every name in the records either steps down from office or is arrested for corruption, I agreed. And you being so tight with Arasaka can have them stand by you in a show of anti-corruption. He sat back in his chair. The city's largest celebrity standing shoulder to shoulder with the city's largest corporate entity to purge the government of its false actors. Leaving, presumably, one man who stands as an example of incorruptibility in the city's government. His reputation will grow and pave the way for him to become... What? The next mayor? I asked, leading him to the inevitable conclusion. At least we're thinking alike, he smirked. You get your facility. I get my position. We both win. I stared at him for several moments. I set the pad down and crossed my arms. That's not enough. You want more? He asked. You wouldn't go through this much trouble if you didn't want more. I replied. Neither of us would. Becoming mayor isn't the goal, it's the initial step. So, the question is, what's the ultimate goal? He smiled in appreciation of my ability to see that he was working toward something more. This world is too dependent on the system, more so than on the Earth we were used to. If it weren't for having to eat, wash, and go to the bathroom, they'd never have to move. They fill their lives with pointless entertainment, drugs that give them a false sense of euphoria and serve no purpose beyond taking up space, I finished for him. He glared at me and nodded. Precisely. I like what you've been doing with your live stream, teaching people basic crafting skills and the like. I want to be in a position where we can do more with that. I want to promote self-sustainability and self-reliance, and I want you to be the face of the campaign. Now, before you ask what's in it for you, because we both know you'll wonder, I've come up with this. His pupils lit up for a moment, and a folder on the data pad opened up. I picked the pad up and looked through the information. My eyes widened with surprise. Inside were plans to make me Santo Domingo's councilman. This would essentially grant me full control over the district. Alongside that were pre-filled federal applications for infrastructure improvements, parks, community centers, and a large portion of unoccupied land to be designated as community farmland. I went through the information line by line, taking in every detail. He was planning years in advance, and had been making me the cornerstone of those plans without my knowledge. You want to turn Santo Domingo into a self-sufficient zone as an example of what people can do without all the technology in their lives, I said, as I checked through the information. And you won't have to worry about the 6th Street gang because I could kill them at a whim, I smirked, cutting my eyes up at him. Because they want to see these changes come to the district. He finished his statement. Most of them are veterans of the Fourth Corpo War. And while they have strayed from their original reason for coming together as a gang, they've been intrigued by the changes I've suggested. In fact, I have it on good authority that many of them watch your live streams to learn the skills you're showing off. I hummed in thought. I'd be fine helping with the self-sufficiency part, but I don't want to be a part of the government. I don't want to have anything to do with that this time around if I can help it. Since when? He scoffed. I glared up at him, and I noticed he saw more in my expression than I let on. I've been trying to deal with a lot over the past number of years. I just want to take this life to enjoy. The simpler things, he nodded. Doesn't matter. We can still work with that. We'll just need someone we can trust to stand in for you, as councilman. I know someone, I said quickly. He'll be happy to help. He raised a skeptical brow. And you think he would stick to the plan? He wouldn't grab power and run with it? Trust me, I replied with a smile. He's been my biggest supporter since we met. He'll be perfect. Good, he said with a finality that I recognized as a signal that the conversation had come to its end. I'll wait for you to make the first move with that information. You just make sure your man is ready to take on the responsibility of running the district. I nodded and stood. I'll get things rolling within a week. He stood respectfully. Excellent. Goodbye, Merida. His tone with my name indicated a finality with the former debate. I looked up at him and held my breath, debating whether or not I should argue the point, but resigned myself to simply saying, Goodbye, David.